And so here you see a copy of our original no edit worksheet, and in this case I've added some extra data in here and grouped a few cells. You'll also want to skip certain cells. In this case I have these grouped. So if you type in this information that's on the right here, you want to make sure that you start in column W. So in this video we're going to look at our substitute and replace functions, and the first thing we're going to do is figure out what substitute is going to do. And here you see that it's going to replace an existing text with new text in a text string. And so as you can imagine, it's going to look for a particular character or text within that string and then replace it with your new text. And so in this case, our text that we want to look in is going to be cell A2. The old text that we're going to look for is going to be the value in W2 here. And so I just have a lowercase p that's typed in there. And the new text is going to be the value that I have in cell X2. And what we will see is that the P in alpha is going to be replaced with that new text. And so here you see that it has AL, and then the replacement of a percent sign, the letter Y, and another percent sign, and then the H and the A for alpha. So we simply use this substitute in order to substitute it for that letter that we wanted to replace. If I fill down, you notice that there were no other replacements made. And the reason that there were no other replacements made is because none of those other words had a letter P in them. If I change this to the letter L, and you'll see that all the letter L's within each one of those cells have been replaced by a percent sign, the letter Y, and a percent sign. Again, there's no meaning with that percent, Y, and percent. It's just an illustration for us to easily identify what we're replacing with. If I were to change it to a number sign, you would see those cells update. And so in this case, if you had a lot of data that you needed to substitute certain letters for or certain characters for, you could quite easily. Our replace function is going to be similar but do a slightly different thing. Here you see it's going to replace part of a text string with a different text string. And so in this case, we're still going to give our old text. That's the cell that we're going to look at the data in. Our start number, in this case, we're going to use the value in cell Y2. We could easily type a 2 here, but we want to make sure we can update this as we need. Number of characters, we're going to use the value in cell Z2. And our new text is going to be the value in cell X2. And here what you see is that we've used that text in order to replace certain characters in that text string. And so in this case, we just happen to have 4 of these number signs. So if I change these number signs to 3, you'll see what happens. And so in this case, what it's telling us it's going to do, it's going to take the text that we had here, this value in cell A2, and it's going to start with the second character, in this case where the letter L is. It's going to replace 4 characters. And so for alpha, it's going to replace LPHA with whatever new text we're going to put in there. And in this case, we have new text in cell X2. And so it's simply going to replace the characters LPHA with the value that we have in X2. If we were to change it back to our percent Y percent, you'll see that same thing happens. Now, if we were to change the number of characters that we wanted to use, if we were to change this to 3, you'll see that it's going to replace 3 characters, the L, P, and H, starting with the second character. If we change it to 2, it's going to replace 2 characters, the L and the P in alpha, the R and the A in Bravo. So again, there may be some use for this depending on how your data is entered, and it might be a quick way for you to update that data. And so that might be one way that we could change the text or replace a text that we have in these cells in order to match a particular format that we want to use. And so now we're going to look at how we might join text in Excel. So the first thing we're going to do is simply use an ampersand. So in cell R2, we need to type in the following. Equals A2, the ampersand, and then B2. When I hit enter, you'll see what that does. And in this case, I've went back and ungrouped column B. And we'll see here that it appeared to join those two strings together. And here we can see the impact for those remaining company and SIC codes. Now we'll use the concatenate function in column S. And you'll see here that it's going to join several text strings into one string, which sounds like something that we just did, but let's find out. In this case, this function wants me to select the text that we want to concatenate. And so I'm going to use cells A2 and B2. And here you'll see we have the same value. So this concatenate function is going to be the same as our ampersand. And if we fill down, we see that it's consistent across all of those rows. In cell T2, I'm going to use the concatenate function again. I'm still going to work with cell A2, but in this case, I'm going to add some letters after that. So maybe we want to just type in I and C here. So we can try that and hit enter. And we'll get an error here, and then we'll remember that every time we work with text in Excel, we need to use quotation marks. So here we see that in this cell, we've used our concatenate function to join the text that's in cell A2 with I and C. And that has a certain look to it, but maybe we want some spaces. So in this case, those underscores above would represent spaces. And so here I just used our quotation marks again, and I'll hit the spacebar twice. And maybe that looks a little bit better. And so this concatenate feature is going to allow us to pull information together. So for example, if you had customers that typed in their own address data, and you had separate fields, one for the street number, one for the street name, one for the city, and one for the state. If you export that data from the website into an Excel file or to a comma-separated value or text file, you could use that data in Excel and then combine all of those in order to create a mailing address for them.